So this is my 2008 Honda Element. I bought this car in the fall of 2018 with the intention of turning it into a camper van kind of setup. In the summer of 2019, I drove this car around the country for 3 months. I went down to Florida, out to California, up to Oregon, Washington, all around the American West, and back home to New Jersey here. So when I built the camper, I basically built a frame out of 2x4s, used kind of the frame of the car, kind of the rest some wood on, and then I bolted the frame together like a deck and just laid a piece of plywood on top, which was the top of the bed. And it's worked fine. It's been pretty sturdy. So the reason I built the frame in the back of the car is not really necessary to build a frame, obviously, to camp in it. You can just camp on the bottom of the floor of the car there. But what it helps is it gives a place you to store things. It's also good for, if you're going to be traveling. A lot of times I'll hide valuables under there. A lot of times when people do a Honda Element build out, they will get a custom sized mattress to sit on top of the piece of plywood. For me, I really just stacked a bunch of sleeping bags on top of each other, and I've had no issues sleeping on that. So for my window covers, I basically got pieces of corrugated plastic. You can buy in Home Depot in big sheets. Trace the outline of the window and then trace it onto the corrugated plastic and just cut out around it. But it basically just pops right in there. So in the front of the car here, I attached a bungee cord. Just basically hung a black sheet over this, and that basically stops people from seeing it from the front when you're in the back. So some of the features or elements that I like best about the Honda Element, that's very inconspicuous because no one's gonna suspect that someone's living in it. And I like the boxy shape. It's good for putting a camping build out in the back. It's good for storage. I also like the Honda reliability that you can count on. After 16,333 miles of driving through humid weather in Florida, to 100-degree days out in Arizona, humidity of Pacific Northwest, back roads, dirt roads, highways, zero issues. So when the Honda Element came out in 2003, it was originally marketed to be a car for, traveling, camping, surfing. It ended up becoming popular with a lot of older retired people, but it wasn't until after it was discontinued in 2011 that it finally became popular in the audience it was supposed to be originally sold for. You could buy it used and basically turn it into a camper van. I was looking for a boxy kind of car that I could build a camper build out in, and I was actually talking to a neighbor of mine who originally owned this vehicle, and I was saying, I'm looking for a car for a cross-country trip, maybe something like the Element that you used to have. And that's when he said, oh, well, the guy I sold to actually is looking to sell it. So he got me in touch with him, and that's how I ended up buying the vehicle. So the Honda Element community is actually a very tight-knit community. You see someone else driving this car, it's a very unique-looking car. You're always waving to them. If you park next to them, you're always stopping to talk about your car. It's actually funny, on my road trip in 2019, I was out in Montana. The road was closed for construction. They had to close the road temporarily, so I was parked there for 30 minutes waiting for the road to be open. And I see an Element pull up behind me, and I get out, and it's a girl, actually. She's doing the same thing I'm doing. Element that's converted into a camper van. It's from Pennsylvania, not far from where I live in New Jersey. So when I was finally back in the following winter, I met up with her. So it's cool to meet people on the road who are doing the same thing you're doing and then make friends that way. One of the coolest places I brought my vehicle to camp on my road trip was this place called Slab City out in California near the Salton Sea. It's an old abandoned, I think it's a military facility where it's just a bunch of cement slabs where people set up campers and built little shacks. Just a lot of people kind of living off the grid, a lot of old people, kind of a lot of hippies and just kind of vagabonds just kind of living out there. Another cool place I took the vehicle was out to Death Valley. That was a really cool place to drive through, and I camped just outside Death Valley at it was an old abandoned RV campground. So I started my road trip in New Jersey here where I'm from, and initially went down to the Florida Keys. And from there I went out west, across Texas, out to California, down to the southwesternmost point, down near Mexico, and I kind of slowly made my way up the west coast until I went up to Oregon and Washington, where I went to the northwesternmost point up there in the corner of Washington. And from Washington, I went into Idaho and Montana for a little bit, down to Yellowstone, and I spent a couple weeks in Wyoming there. And from there, I did a little loop down to Utah, down actually back into Arizona, up through New Mexico to the Four Corners area, Sand Dune area in Colorado, Denver area. And from there, I kind of went back across the country through Kansas, Missouri, and then kind of went up back through Ohio and back to New Jersey from there. So during my couple months driving around the country, I didn't really have too many weird experiences. I had one time where I was at a gas station in Oklahoma filling up with gas. A police car came, parked at the gas station, and was like looking at me real suspicious. I was wearing a tie-dye shirt at the time, so obviously didn't help me being in Oklahoma. It was at the morning time. I needed to regroup and kind of plan my day, so I went, parked across the street it was a parking lot of a bank. I was kind of eating breakfast, kind of planning my day, and the police officer comes from the gas station, comes across the street, pulls up next to me, gets out, he has like his hand on his gun, like acting like he's real tough, and he's like, "Is there a reason you're parked outside of a bank that isn't open for another hour?" I'm like, "No, I'm just kind of driving across country, resting, you know, just kind of hanging out." And he was like, "I see, well, I think everyone in town would be more comfortable if you left now." So I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'm out of here." So one of the obvious problems with camping in a vehicle is obviously the heat. You're not going to be able to, go inside this thing at 12 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of July. You'll cook yourself to death inside of it. So that is one issue you have to keep in mind. But once it's dark out, usually, by late at night, you'll be fine. The windows on the side here pop out. I have a sunroof that opens up. A lot of times I'll pop that during the summer if it gets a little hot. So one of the best times actually, I think, to camp in Element is actually in the winter time. I'll just run the engine for like 10 minutes, run the heater, and that heat seems to stay trapped in for a while. A good self-camping spot is somewhere where you're not going to look out of place, somewhere where it looks like someone would just be parked for the night. Nothing looks out of the ordinary. A lot of the places I look for a good self-camping spot are going to be an auto mechanics shop. That's a good place where you'll see like just random cars kind of parked out there, and you can just slip in there at night and no one's going to know the difference. You just take off right at dawn. Hospitals are a good place. There's people parked at hospitals all hours of the day. Movie theaters, bars, some grocery stores like Wegmans are open 24 hours a day, so you can just park there and no one's going to know the difference. So yeah, thanks for joining us for the video here. I hope this helps with your Honda Element build, and we'll see you on the road.